Someone once said that the most painful thing in the world is not losing someone you love. It is finding them after the loss has already begun. And if you are the kind of person who believes that money, power, and silence can protect you from grief, Wong Mun is proof that it cannot. Before we get into this story, drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from. Seriously, it helps this channel more than you know, and every single comment means the world to us. Now, let us get into it. Wong Mun was at the billing desk. Same as always. Quiet. No announcement. No crowd. Just him and Dae-young standing 2 steps behind, and Rosette, the billing clerk who had learned by now not to ask too many questions, pulling up the account on her screen. The Tumblin family, Wong Mun said, "Room 208. Clear the balance." Rosette's eyes moved across the screen. "Sir, this is over 19,000. "Clear it," he said. She looked at Dae-young. Dae-young said nothing. She turned back and started processing. Wong Mun reached into his jacket for his card, and that was when his eyes moved. Not intentionally, just the way eyes move in a busy room. Drifting, scanning, settling on nothing in particular. His gaze crossed the open floor of the ER waiting area, past a row of chairs, and landed on the wide glass partition at the far end of the room. The one that looked directly into the trauma bays. There was a gurney, a woman on it, 2 nurses moving fast around her, adjusting lines, checking equipment, speaking quickly to each other in low, urgent voices. The woman was thin, dangerously thin. Not the kind of thin that happens in a week. The kind that builds over months of not being taken care of. Her skin, a deep warm brown, looked pale and dull around the edges. Her natural hair was damp and pressed flat against the pillow. Her arms, both of them, visible below the hospital gown, were covered in bruises. Dark ones, old ones layered under new ones. The kind of bruising that tells a story no one should have had to live through. A breathing mask covered the lower half of her face. A respirator beside the gurney was doing the work her lungs were struggling to do alone. Monitors tracked every fragile beat of her heart. Wong Mun's hand stopped moving. His eyes locked, because he knew that face, even from across the room, even through the glass, even after 3 full years. He knew that face the way you know something that was once the most familiar thing in your world. "Sir," Rosette said. She had been asking him something. He had heard none of it. "Wong." Dae-young's voice. Low. Careful. Wong Mun was already moving. He left his card on the counter. Left Rosette mid-sentence. Cut straight across the waiting room floor toward the glass partition, toward the trauma bay, toward that gurney, and he stopped at the glass and stood there and stared. Crystal Anderson, his ex, lying on that bed, brutally broken, hooked to a machine just to keep breathing. His jaw tightened so hard it ached. She was unrecognizable in the worst possible way. Not because her face had changed, it had not, but because everything that had once lived in that face, the sharpness, the warmth, the energy that filled whatever room she entered, was completely gone. What was left looked like someone who had been worn down to almost nothing. Piece by piece, over a long, long time. Wong Mun pressed one hand flat against the glass. Dae-young appeared beside him, took one look through the partition, and went completely still. "Is that?" "Yes," Wong Mun said. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Wong Mun turned and stepped directly into the path of a passing nurse. "Young." Name tag that read TYLA. "That woman in there," he said. "Who is her doctor?" Tyla slowed. "Sir, patient information is..." "I am not asking for a chart. I am asking who her doctor is." Tyla looked at him, then at the bay. Something in his face, not threatening, just certain, the kind of certain that does not negotiate, made her answer, "Dr. Kason Frimpong. But I can't let you." "Get him. Now." Tyla looked at Dae-young. Dae-young waited. She went. Dr. Aiden Kason Frimpong came down the hall with a clipboard, already preparing to handle a difficult visitor. He was compact, mid-50s, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of tired that only years of night shifts could carve into a person. He stopped in front of Wong Mun. "You're here about the woman in Bay 4? "Yes. Tell me everything." "Sir, unless you are family." Tell me everything, Wang Mun said again. Same tone, same volume. The kind of quiet that is louder than shouting. Dr. Kasen Frimpong studied him for a long second, then he looked down at his clipboard and began. Severe malnutrition. Dehydration serious enough to have already stressed her kidneys. A respiratory infection that had been left completely untreated for months, until it spread and began pressing on her lungs. And the bruising. Old bruising under new bruising under older bruising still. Layered. The doctor used that word specifically. Layered. This, Dr. Kasen Frimpong said, carefully, is what happens when someone goes without care, and without safety, for a very long time. Wang Mun said nothing for a moment. Then what does she need? More than a standard admission can provide. The specialist she needs is not on our staff. A pulmonologist would have to be brought in, and that kind of arrangement. Call one. Tonight. The cost alone would. I said tonight. Dr. Kasen Frimpong went quiet. He recalibrated, looked at Wang Mun the way people looked at him when they finally understood what they were dealing with. Then he nodded slowly. I'll make calls, he said. By midnight, Wang Mun had signed more paperwork in one sitting than the billing department had seen from a single individual in years. Her admission fees, specialist costs, the upgraded monitoring equipment that Tyla, while walking past with a tray, quietly mentioned the ICU had been requesting for 2 years without budget approval. Wang Mun covered it. All of it. No speeches. No explanations. He signed where they pointed, paid what they asked, and did not flinch at a single number. Then he pulled a chair from the hallway and placed it beside the glass partition of room 14, where Crystal had been moved once she was stabilized enough to transfer. He sat down. Not inside. The nurses needed the space, and he was not ready to be inside, but close enough to see through the glass. The monitors, the slow, assisted rise and fall of her chest. Dae-young stood behind him, silent. Wang Mun looked at the bruises on her arms through the glass. Layered. That word had not left his chest since the doctor said it. It sat there like something with a sharp edge that kept moving. He had met Crystal Anderson 4 years ago, spent 1.5 years trying to understand what she was to him and failing every time he tried to put a name on it. She was stubborn and funny and fiercely, deeply kind, not soft kind, but the kind with limits and edges and standards. She pushed back. She asked the questions other people avoided. She was not afraid of him, which was, in his entire life, possibly the rarest thing he had ever come across. And then he had walked away, not because she had done anything wrong, because he had looked at his world, what it cost people standing too close to it, and he had made a decision. Clean, quiet, final. He had told himself it was right. He had told himself she would be safer. He had been wrong. Whatever had happened to her in the 3 years since that studio door in Briar Hollow, Tennessee, it had not been safe. It had been the opposite of safe, and she had clearly survived it alone, without anyone to stop it, until her body finally gave out in an apartment in Mineral Springs, Virginia, and a neighbor found her unresponsive and called an ambulance. Wang Mun sat with that for a long time. At 4 a.m., Tyler came out of room 14 and stopped beside him. The specialist, Dr. Daniel Regina, out of Cloverfield, Maryland, agreed to come in. She'll be here by 7. Is Crystal in pain right now? Wang Mun asked. She's sedated. She's not feeling anything, Tyler said. Good. Tyler hesitated at his shoulder. Then are you family? Wang Mun looked through the glass. At Crystal. At the monitors. No, he said. But take care of her like I am. Tyler nodded. Went back inside. Dr. Daniel Regina arrived at 7:15 a.m. tall. Close-cropped hair. The unhurried confidence of someone who had never needed to prove herself to a room. She looked at Wang Mun once, quickly, completely. You're the one who called, she said. Yes. She went in without another word. Wang Mun stood at the glass and watched the team work around Crystal. Checking. Adjusting. Running tests. Speaking in low voices he could not hear. He had always believed that power meant control, that if you had enough leverage over enough things, the world moved the way you needed it to, But standing there, watching, waiting, completely unable to do the one thing that actually mattered, he understood something new. There were rooms that power could not enter. He could pay for everything. He could call the best people. He could make sure every resource available was pointed directly at her. But he could not make her body fight. He could not undo the months, maybe years of damage already done. He could not go back to Briar Hollow and choose differently. Power had edges, and standing on the wrong side of those edges at 7 a.m. in Mineral Springs, Virginia, Wong Mun felt something he almost never felt. Completely, utterly, helpless. At 9 a.m., Dr. Regina came out with Dr. Kason Frimpong. Both of them carried the expression that doctors learn, not alarming, not reassuring, just honest. She's stable. For now, Dr. Regina said, but her lungs have taken serious damage. The infection went untreated for months. The malnutrition has suppressed her immune system. Her body is depleted. Plan, Wong Mun said, nutritional support, antibiotics, respiratory therapy, twice daily, monitoring, and time. If she responds well in the next 72 hours, we'll know more. And if she doesn't respond well, Dr. Regina looked at him directly. Then we adjust and we keep trying. Wong Mun nodded once. Then keep trying, he said. Dae-young brought food. At 10 a.m., Wong Mun stood at the window eating without tasting anything, looking down at Mineral Springs going about its ordinary morning. One question had been building since the moment he saw her through that glass partition. Not just how she ended up in this hospital. Not just how she ended up in this town. But how she ended up like this. Depleted. Destroyed. Alone. Who had done this? He turned to Dae-young. Find out everything. Who she has been with. Where she has been living. Everything from the last 3 years. Already started, Dae-young said. I'll have something by tonight. Wong Mun looked back at the window. Good, he said. And he waited. The report Dae-young brought that evening was not long. It did not need to be. 4 pages. Printed clean. Dae-young had placed it on the small table beside Wong Mun's chair in the hallway outside room 14 without a word, then stepped back and stood with his hands clasped and his eyes forward. The way he always stood when he had delivered something he knew was going to land hard. Wong Mun picked it up. He read it once. Then he set it down. Then he picked it up and read it again, slower this time, the way you reread something when part of your brain is refusing to process what your eyes are seeing. His face did not change. It almost never did. But his hand, the one holding the pages, tightened just slightly at the edges. Crystal Anderson had moved to Mineral Springs, Virginia, 14 months ago. Before that, she had been in Gravel Creek, North Carolina. Before that, a small town called Dustin's Fork in southern Ohio. She had moved 3 times in under 2 years, each move following the same man. His name was Andrew Tyrell, 34 years old, originally from Fenwick Bluff, Georgia. No steady employment on record for the past 18 months. 2 prior addresses that matched Crystal's exactly, meaning they had been living together at each location. 1 prior charge filed and then dropped, the kind of dropped that happens when the person who filed it suddenly changes their mind under pressure. Dae-young had also spoken to the neighbor who called the ambulance. An older woman named Cressida Vane, who lived in the apartment directly below Crystal's. Cressida had told Dae-young, carefully, slowly, like someone who had been holding words in for a long time and was finally being given permission to let them out, that she had heard things through the ceiling for months. Arguments that were not arguments because only one voice was ever raised. Long silences after loud sounds. And Crystal, on the rare occasions Cressida saw her in the hallway, always looked smaller than the last time, always had a reason for whatever was visible, always smiled in a way that did not reach anywhere near her eyes. Cressida had knocked on the door once, 3 months ago, to check. Crystal had opened it just wide enough to say she was fine, and then closed it again. Cressida had not stopped worrying since. Wong Mun set the report down on the table. He sat for a long time without speaking. Where is Andrew Tyrell now? He said finally. We don't know yet, Dae-young said. He was not at the apartment when the ambulance came. Neighbors say they haven't seen him since the night, before she was found. "Find him," Wang Mun said. "Already working on it." Wang Mun nodded once and said nothing else. 2 days passed. Crystal remained sedated through most of it. Her body needed the rest more than it needed consciousness. Dr. Regina had explained the respiratory therapy was happening twice daily. The nutritional support was going in slowly, carefully, because refeeding a body that had been starved for a long time had to be done at exactly the right pace or it caused its own damage. Wang Mun learned more about medicine in those 2 days than he had in his entire life before them. He stayed, not in the hallway, the entire time. Dae-young had arranged a room at a quiet in 2 streets from a hospital, and Wang Mun went there to sleep in short, shallow intervals. But every morning by 6 a.m. he was back. Every evening, he was the last person in the corridor outside room 14 who was not staff. The nurses had stopped questioning his presence. Tyla brought him coffee on the second morning without being asked, set it on the table beside him, said nothing and walked away. He found that small gesture, its quietness, its lack of drama, oddly steadying. On the third morning, Dr. Regina came to find him before her rounds. "She's showing response," she said. "Better than I expected this quickly." Her oxygen levels improved overnight. The fever broke around 3 a.m. Something shifted in Wang Mun's chest, barely visible from the outside, but real. "Can she wake up?" he asked. "Not our decision, hers. But her body is moving in the right direction." Dr. Regina paused. "Whoever she is, she's fighting." Wang Mun looked through the glass at Crystal. "She always did," he said quietly. She opened her eyes on the 4th day. Not dramatically. Not all at once. It happened in the late afternoon, a Tuesday, overcast outside, the hallway quieter than usual. A nurse named Bex was in the room, checking her lines when Crystal's fingers moved first. Then her head turned slightly on the pillow. Then her eyes slowly, with what looked like tremendous effort, opened. Bex immediately stepped out and came to find Wang Mun. "She's awake," she said. Wang Mun was on his feet before Bex finished the sentence. He stood in the doorway of room 14 and looked at Crystal Anderson for the first time in 3 years with her eyes open. They were the same. Even through everything, the exhaustion, the damage, the weeks of sedation, her eyes were the same. Dark and sharp and present in a way that had always made him feel like she could see things other people missed. Those eyes found him immediately. She stared. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The monitors beeped softly. Outside the window, Mineral Springs sat gray and still under its Tuesday clouds. Then Crystal's mouth moved. The breathing mask had been shifted to a nasal cannula that morning, a small improvement. Her voice, when it came, was rough and thin. "Almost nothing." "Wang Mun," she said. Not a question. Not surprise exactly. More like someone confirming something they thought they might have dreamed. "Yes," he said. She looked at the ceiling, then back at him. "How?" "Dae-young called me," he said. Then, after a pause, "I was already here. In the building. Paying a bill." Something moved across her face. Not quite a smile. More like the ghost of one. "Of course you were," she said. He pulled the chair close to the bed and sat down. She did not talk much that first day. She was too tired, and the doctors limited the interaction anyway. No stress, no long conversations, nothing that would spike her vitals while her body was still finding its footing. But she talked a little. In fragments. In the careful, measured way of someone who had learned to be careful with words over a long period of time. Wang Mun sat and listened without rushing her, without asking the questions that were sitting in his chest. He had learned patience in hard rooms. He could wait. On the second day, after she woke, she was stronger. Enough that Dr. Regina allowed a longer conversation, provided Wang Mun watched her vitals on the monitor and stopped the moment anything climbed. It was on that second day that Crystal told him about Andrew Tyrell. She started slowly, looking at the ceiling more than at him, which was fine. He did not need her to look at him. He needed her to talk. Andrew had come into her life 8 months after Wang Mun left. She had been in Briar Hollow, still, trying to rebuild something from the pieces of herself that she had been putting back together. He had seemed, she said, like the opposite of everything that had hurt her. Warm. attentive, present in a way that felt like relief after a long drought. He was good at the beginning, she said. Her voice was still thin, but steadier now. Really good. The kind of good that makes you think, okay, this is what normal feels like. Wang Mun said nothing, but she continued, good like that, the kind that's performing, it gets tired eventually. It can't keep up with itself. She paused. The first time he said something that made me feel small, I told myself it was a bad day. The second time, I told myself I was being sensitive. Another pause. Longer. By the time I stopped making excuses, I was already somewhere I didn't recognize. Wang Mun kept his eyes on her face and his hands still on his knees. She told him about the moves, how each one had been framed as a fresh start, a better opportunity, something new. But each one had also pulled her further from everyone she knew. Her best friend Tasha, back in Briar Hollow. Her cousin Della in Fayetteville. Each move had made those connections harder to maintain until they were mostly just names she thought about when she was alone. Which, she said, quietly was exactly the point. He didn't want people around me who would notice, she said. People who knew me well enough to ask the right questions. Wang Mun's jaw tightened. She told him about the financial control, how her money, the ceramics sales, the occasional commissions, had slowly been absorbed into a shared account that she somehow never had full access to. How, when she pushed back, there were consequences. Not always loud ones. Sometimes just a silence that lasted for days, cold and deliberate, and designed to make her feel like she had done something wrong by having an opinion. He never had to shout much, she said. He was smarter than that. He just made the world around me smaller and smaller, until I didn't have enough room to breathe. She looked at the nasal cannula. And then I literally didn't. Wang Mun sat very still. She told him about the night the ambulance came, or rather, the weeks before it. She had been sick for a long time, she said. She had known something was wrong with her lungs, had felt it. But Andrew had convinced her it was nothing serious, that hospitals were expensive, that she was overreacting. He had kept telling her to wait. And she had waited, and waited, and waited, while whatever was in her chest got worse and worse until one morning she woke up and could not get out of bed, and Andrew was not there, and the ceiling was spinning, and Cressida, downstairs, somehow heard her fall. I fell getting up to get water, Crystal said. Simply, that's what it came to. The room was very quiet after she said that. Wang Mun looked at her, at the bruises still visible on her arms, fading slowly from dark to yellow at the edges, at the thinness of her face, at the effort it was taking her just to have this conversation. He is gone, Wang Mun said, since the night before they found you. Crystal nodded slowly. I figured, she said. He probably saw it coming, saw that the neighbor had noticed. He's good at leaving before things catch up to him. She paused. He's done it before. Wang Mun looked at his hands. Not this time, he said. Crystal looked at him, her eyes sharp and present, and still exactly the same, searched his face for a moment. Wang, she said, carefully, whatever you are thinking. Rest, he said. You need a rest. She held his gaze for a moment longer. Then, slowly, she looked back at the ceiling. You haven't changed, she said. It was not quite a compliment. Not quite a criticism, either. Just an observation. No, he agreed. That night, after Crystal was asleep and the floor was quiet, Wang Mun sat outside her room and called Dae-young. Andrew Tyrell, he said. Tell me you found him. Fenwick Bluff, Georgia, Dae-young said. He went back to where he started. Staying with someone, we're not sure who yet. But we have the address. Wang Mun was quiet for a moment. Good, he said. Don't touch anything yet. I want to know everything about him first. His finances. His habits. The charge that was dropped. Who dropped it and why. Everything. Understood, Dae-young said. Wang Mun hung up. He looked through the glass at Crystal sleeping. The monitors steady. The machine still assisting her breathing, but less urgently than before. A small improvement, but a real one. She had survived Andrew Tyrell. Barely, but she had survived. Wang Mun intended to make sure Andrew Tyrell understood, in the clearest possible terms, and in a way he would carry for the rest of his life, exactly what that survival had cost. But that was tomorrow's work. Tonight, he sat in the hallway and he kept watch, and for the first time in 3 years, he was exactly where he needed to be. And just before we continue, if this story is hitting different for you right now, do us a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear stories like this one. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is a good time. We will be right back. The full picture of Andrew Tyrell arrived 3 days later. Dae-young delivered it the same way he delivered everything, quietly, without drama, placing the folder on the table beside Wang-mun's chair and stepping back. But this time he did not step as far back as usual. He stayed closer, which meant what was inside was worse than the last one. Wang-mun opened it. He read slowly, carefully, the way he read everything that required a decision afterward. Andrew Tyrell had done this before. Not once, not twice, 3 times before Crystal. 3 different women in 3 different states, each relationship following the same pattern with the precision of something rehearsed. He found women who were rebuilding, women who were a little bruised from life. Already, not broken, just tender enough to believe that someone showing up warm and certain was a sign that things were turning around. He was patient with them at first, generous. He made them feel chosen. And then, slowly, methodically, he made their world smaller, moved them, isolated them, controlled what they had and where they went and how they felt about themselves until they did not have enough left to leave. The charge that had been dropped, the one from 2 years ago, had been filed by a woman named Solange Pruitt in Dustin's Fork, Ohio, the same Dustin's Fork where Crystal had lived with Andrew before Mineral Springs. Solange had filed the charge, then withdrawn it 6 days later. Dae-young had spoken to her. She had withdrawn it, she told Dae-young, because Andrew had shown up at her mother's house. He had not threatened anyone directly. He had just shown up, smiled, made conversation. And when he left, he had said to Solange, "I just wanted to make sure everyone is doing well." She had dropped the charge the next morning. Wang-mun closed the folder. He sat for a long time without moving. Then he stood up, straightened his jacket, and said to Dae-young, "Set up a meeting. Fenwick Bluff. 2 days." Dae-young nodded. "How many people?" "Just us," Wang-mun said. "This does not need an audience." He did not tell Crystal he was leaving for 2 days. He told her he had business to handle, which was true enough. She was stronger now, noticeably so. She was sitting up on her own, eating small amounts, talking more, though still carefully, still in the measured way she had developed over the past terrible year. Dr. Regina had described her progress as remarkable given where she had started, which Wang-mun understood to mean that Crystal's stubbornness, that deep, structural refusal to give up that had always defined her, was the thing keeping her recovery ahead of expectations. That sounded right to him. On the morning he left, he stopped in the doorway of her room. She was sitting up against the pillow, a journal open in her lap. Tyla had brought it from a gift shop downstairs, unprompted, which had made Crystal go very still, and then very quietly say thank you in a way that meant more than the words. She looked up when Wang-mun appeared in the doorway. "You're leaving," she said. "Not a question." 2 days, he said. "Dae-young will be here." She looked at him with those sharp, reading eyes. "Wang." "Yes." "Don't do anything that can't be undone," she said. He held her gaze. "I never do," he said. She looked at him for a long moment. She did not look convinced, but she also did not push further, maybe because she was tired, maybe because some part of her understood that this particular door was already closed. 2 days, she said. 2 days, he confirmed. And he left. Fenwick Bluff, Georgia was the kind of small town that looked friendly on the surface, wide streets, old oak trees lining the main road, a diner on the corner with a handwritten menu in the window. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers were noticed immediately. Wang-mun and Dae-young arrived on a Thursday morning in a rental car, unremarkable gray, the kind nobody looked at twice. They found the address Dae-young had tracked. A house on the east side of town, a single story with a covered porch, and a truck in the driveway that had seen better years. Andrew Tyrell was not a large man. That was the first thing Wang-mun noted when he opened the door. Medium height, soft-faced, the kind of face that was easy to trust, open, approachable, with the particular warmth of someone who had spent years practicing warmth. He was wearing a plain t-shirt and holding a mug. He looked, standing in his doorway on a Thursday morning, like someone who had absolutely nothing to be worried about. That was about to change. He looked at Wang Mun, then at Dae-young, then back at Wang Mun. "Can I help you?" he said. "Friendly. Easy." "I think so," Wang Mun said. "May we come in?" What happened inside that house was not loud. That was the thing about Wang Mun, he was never loud. Loudness was for people who needed to compensate for something. Wang Mun had never needed to compensate for anything. He simply sat across from Andrew Tyrell at a kitchen table in Fenwick Bluff, Georgia, and he laid things down one by one like cards. Slowly, deliberately. He told Andrew what he knew. All of it. The three women before Crystal. Solange Pruitt and the drop charge. The pattern, each move, each isolation, each slow and careful dismantling. He said it all in a voice that was level and unhurried and gave Andrew absolutely no opening to redirect or deflect. Andrew tried anyway. At first, he was confused. "I don't know what you've been told, but..." Wang Mun kept talking. Then he was defensive. "Crystal and I had a complicated relationship." It wasn't. Wang Mun kept talking. Then he went quiet, because Wang Mun had placed something on the table. Not a weapon. Not anything threatening. Just a single printed document. Andrew looked at it. His face changed. It was a detailed financial summary. Every account Andrew had touched in the past 3 years. Every transaction. Every transfer out of the shared account that Crystal had mentioned, the one she somehow never had full access to. The money that had left that account in small, careful withdrawals over 14 months, adding up to an amount that, on paper, told a very clear story about where Crystal Ceramics' income had been going. Andrew stared at it. "Where did you?" "It does not matter where," Wang Mun said. "What matters is that it exists, and what matters more is what happens with it." Andrew looked up. For the first time since they sat down, the easy warmth was completely gone from his face. What was underneath, it was smaller, harder. And Wang Mun noted this with something cold and precise, frightened. "Good. What do you want?" Andrew said. His voice was different now, stripped of the performance. "I want you to understand something," Wang Mun said. "Not because understanding will undo what you did. It will not. But because you are going to spend the rest of your life knowing that someone saw everything, every move you made, every woman you chose, every careful, patient, deliberate thing you did to make their world small enough to control." He paused, and knowing that the person who saw it has a very long memory and absolutely no reason to forget, Andrew swallowed. "The financial records go to the district attorney's office in Dustin's Fork, Ohio today," Wang Mun continued. "Solange Pruitt has already agreed to refile her statement. She has been waiting for someone to make it safe enough to do so." Andrew's jaw tightened. "You can't." "It is already done," Wang Mun said simply. "The filing happened this morning, before we drove here." The silence in that kitchen was enormous. Andrew looked at the document on the table, then at Wang Mun, then at Dae-young, who had not moved or spoken since they sat down, and whose stillness was, in its own way, more unsettling than anything else in the room. "You came here just to tell me this?" Andrew said. "No," Wang Mun said. "I came here so that you would know it was a person who did this. Not a system. Not a lucky coincidence. A person who chose to make sure you could not do this again." He stood up, straightened his jacket. "The rest will happen without me needing to be involved." He picked up the document from the table. Andrew said nothing. Wang Mun and Dae-young walked to the door. Wang Mun opened it, stepped out onto the porch, and paused for just a moment with his back to the room. "She survived you," he said. "I want you to carry that." He did not wait for a response. He walked to the car. They drove back toward Virginia in silence for a long time. Dae-young was not a man who needed to fill quiet with words. Neither was Wang Mun. They had driven long distances together in silence before. It was one of the things that made Dae-young useful in a world full of people who talked too much. But after about an hour, Dae-young spoke. "Do you feel better?" he asked. Wang Mun considered the question, genuinely. "No," he said. Dae-young nodded slowly. I did not think so. It needed to happen, Wang Mun said, but it does not fix anything. No, Dae-young agreed. It doesn't. They drove on. What Wang Mun had not told Crystal, and what he had not fully admitted to himself until somewhere on that drive back through the gray Virginia afternoon, was that dismantling Andrew Tyrell had been the easy part. Andrew Tyrell was a problem with a solution, finite, addressable, the kind of thing Wang Mun's particular set of skills and resources was precisely built for. But Crystal was not a problem with a solution. Crystal was a person who had survived something long and deliberate and damaging, and who was now lying in a hospital bed in Mineral Springs, Virginia, rebuilding herself breath by breath. A person whose recovery was real, but whose prognosis, Dr. Regina had been honest about this, was still uncertain. The lung damage was significant. The body's response to the nutritional support had been good, but not complete. There were numbers on monitors that were improving, but had not yet reached the place they needed to reach. Wang Mun had spent his entire adult life in a world where money and leverage and the right kind of pressure could solve most things. He was beginning to understand, with a clarity that was deeply uncomfortable, that this was not most things. He arrived back at Crescent Valley Medical Center on the second evening exactly as promised. Dae-young went ahead to check in with the nurses. Wang Mun went directly to room 14. Crystal was awake. She had moved the visitor chair beside the window and was sitting in it, a small but significant thing, the first time she had been out of the bed since she woke up. She was wrapped in a blanket Tyla had found somewhere, looking out at Mineral Springs in the dark. The monitors were still attached, thin wires trailing from her to the machines, but she had arranged herself so carefully in that chair that she looked almost like someone just watching the world through a window on an ordinary night. She heard him come in and turned. 2 days, she said. 2 days, he confirmed. She studied his face for a moment with those reading eyes. He let her look. Is it done? She asked. Yes, he said. She turned back to the window. Outside, the town was quiet and dark and ordinary. She was quiet for a moment. Then, Solange Pruitt? Wang Mun went still. How do you know that name? He told me about her once. Crystal said, by accident, I think. Mentioned her in a way that was meant to sound like nothing. But it wasn't nothing. She paused. Is she okay? She will be, Wang Mun said. She is strong. Crystal nodded slowly. Good, she said. That's good. She looked out the window a little longer. Then quietly, without looking at it, thank you. Wang Mun sat down in the second chair, the one beside the bed. You don't need to thank me. I know I don't need to, she said. I wanted to. The room was quiet. The monitors beeped softly. Outside, Mineral Springs sat dark and still and completely unaware. Wang Mun looked at Crystal, at the profile of her face against the window, at the blanket pulled around her shoulders, at the small but real effort she was making just to sit upright in a chair and look at the world outside. She was still fighting. Even now. Still. But the next morning brought something none of them had expected. Dr. Regina came to find Wang Mun before 7 a.m., which was earlier than her usual rounds, and which immediately told him something was wrong before she said a single word. She was calm. She was always calm. But there was something behind her eyes that had not been there before. Her oxygen dropped overnight, Dr. Regina said. We stabilized her, but it took longer than it should have. Her right lung is not responding to the treatment the way the left one is. There is a section of tissue, she paused, choosing words carefully, that may be beyond what the antibiotics can reach. Wang Mun looked at her. What does that mean? It means, Dr. Regina said, that we may be looking at a ceiling, a point beyond which her lungs cannot recover further, regardless of what we do. Another pause. I want to be honest with you, because you have been honest with me about what this situation is. She is improving in some ways, but this particular thing is not improving, and it may not. Wang Mun stood very still. Are you telling me? I am telling you, Dr. Regina said carefully, that we are doing everything, and that everything may not be enough. The hallway was very quiet around them. Wang Mun looked through the glass at room 14. at Crystal, asleep, the monitors beside her tracking every beat of something that was fighting as hard as it could against something that might be stronger. He stood there for a long time. Then he straightened. "Keep trying," he said. The same words he had said on the first morning. The same tone. Dr. Regina nodded. "We will," she said, and she went back in. That evening, Wong Mun sat beside Crystal's bed while she slept and did something he almost never did. He thought about regret. Not the productive kind, the kind that identifies a mistake and builds a correction from it. The other kind, the kind that has no correction, the kind that sits in the chest and simply exists, heavy and permanent, and does not ask anything of you except that you carry it. He had walked away from her 3 years ago because he believed his world was too dangerous for someone like her. He had been trying to protect her, and she had ended up here anyway, not because of his world, because of her own, because of a man with a warm face and a patient, practiced cruelty that Wong Mun's absence had left her completely unprotected against. Maybe if he had stayed, Andrew Tyrell never enters the picture. Maybe. Probably. But still, he had not stayed, and she had paid for it in ways that no amount of signed paperwork and called specialists could undo. Wong Mun sat beside her bed in room 14 and carried that. If this story is speaking to you, hit that like button. Leave a comment. Tell us what you are feeling right now. This channel exists because of every single person who engages with it, and we see every one of you. Stay with us. Next scene is going to be different, and you are not ready for how this ends. The next 4 days were the quietest Wong Mun had ever known. Not peaceful quiet. Not the kind of quiet that rests. The kind that presses. The kind that fills a room so completely that every small sound, a monitor beeping, a nurse's footstep, the distant hum of the hospital's ventilation system, becomes enormous against it. Crystal's condition had stabilized again after the overnight drop. But stabilized did not mean improving. Dr. Regina had used a word during her morning briefing that Wong Mun had not heard her use before: plateau. Crystal's body had found a level it could maintain, but it could not climb from it. The right lung remained stubborn, unresponsive. The tissue damage was too deep, too old, too long ignored to reverse itself now regardless of what was thrown at it. Wong Mun had called in 2 additional specialists that week. One from a respiratory center in Cloverfield, one who flew in from a private practice in Harlow Ridge, Connecticut, a man named Dr. Prentice Anthony who had published papers on advanced lung recovery that Dae-Young had found at 2 a.m. and printed immediately. Dr. Anthony spent a full day reviewing Crystal's case. He was thorough. He was careful. He asked questions that no one else had asked and ordered tests that had not yet been run. Wong Mun watched all of it through the glass with the focused attention of someone who refused to stop believing that the right combination of knowledge and effort would produce a different outcome. On the second day, Dr. Anthony sat down with Wong Mun, Dr. Regina, and Dr. Kason Frimpong in a small consultation room at the end of the 4th floor corridor. He folded his hands on the table. "I have reviewed everything," he said, "and I want to be direct with you because I believe you are someone who needs directness more than comfort." Wong Mun nodded once. "The damage to her right lung is irreversible," Dr. Anthony said. "It has been progressing for too long without intervention. The infection has scarred tissue that cannot regenerate. Her left lung is compensating, and it will continue to compensate, but a single lung carrying the full load of a body that has already been severely depleted, that is not sustainable indefinitely." The room was very still. "How long?" Wong Mun said. Dr. Anthony looked at him directly. "It is not a countdown. It does not work like that. There will be good days. There will be harder days. But the trajectory," he paused, "the trajectory is not toward recovery. I am sorry." Wong Mun looked at the table, at his hands flat on the surface, completely still. "Is there anything," he said carefully, "that has not been tried?" Dr. Anthony was quiet for a moment, not the quiet of someone thinking, the quiet of someone who has already thought and is now delivering the conclusion they reached before they walked into the room. "No," he said, "there is not." Wong Mun did not go back to room 14 immediately after that meeting. He went to the window at the end of the corridor, the same window he had stood at on the first morning, looking down at mineral springs waking up below, and he stood there for a long time. Dae-young was beside him, saying nothing. Below, the town went about its afternoon. Ordinary, unhurried, people walking to their cars, a child on a bicycle, a woman carrying grocery bags across a parking lot. All of them completely unaware that on the fourth floor above them, a Korean Mafia boss was standing at a window, trying to locate, for the first time in his adult life, something to do with the information that there was nothing left to do. He had called the specialists. He had paid for everything. He had dismantled the man who had done this. He had sat beside her bed and kept watch and refused to leave and done every single thing that his particular combination of resources and will and refusal to accept defeat could possibly do. And it was not enough. It was simply, flatly, completely not enough. Dae-young spoke after a while. Quietly, "Do you want me to do anything?" Wong Mun thought about the question for a long time. "No," he said. "There is nothing to do." Dae-young nodded, and they stood there together at the window in silence until Wong Mun was ready to go back. He told Crystal himself. He had considered letting Dr. Regina do it. It was technically the doctor's role. But Crystal deserved to hear it from someone who was not going to use clinical language to soften it into something unrecognizable. She deserved honesty. She had always deserved honesty from him, and he had not always given it, and he was not going to fail her in that particular way again. He went into room 14 that evening and sat in the chair beside her bed. She was awake, sitting up slightly, the journal Tyla had brought open in her lap, but her pen not moving. She looked at his face when he came in, and she knew immediately. He could see it, the recognition, the stillness that settled over her before he said a single word. "Tell me," she said. So he did, not with clinical language, not with careful softening. He told her what Dr. Anthony had said, plainly and directly, the way she had always wanted things from him. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. She looked down at the journal in her lap. Her hand, resting on the open page, was still. Then she looked up at him, and the thing that broke something open in Wong Mun's chest was that she did not look destroyed. She looked sad, deeply, genuinely sad, but also somehow steady, the way someone looks when a thing they have suspected for a long time is finally confirmed, and the confirming of it, while painful, also removes the exhausting work of hoping it is not true. "Okay," she said, quietly. "Just that. Crystal." "No, I mean it," she said. "Okay, I hear you." She exhaled slowly. "I have been so tired, Wong, for so long. And I kept fighting because that is what I do." But she paused. "It is okay to know what I am working with." Wong Mun said nothing. There was nothing to say. "I want to go outside," she said after a moment. He looked at the monitors, at the lines still attached to her. "I will arrange it," he said. 3 days later, with Dr. Regina's careful approval and a portable oxygen unit, and Tyla fussing quietly over the arrangement of the wheelchair, Crystal Anderson went outside for the first time since she had been brought into Crescent Valley Medical Center. It was a morning in late October. Mineral Springs was the kind of cold that had not fully committed yet, crisp at the edges, with the last of the autumn leaves holding on stubbornly to the trees lining the hospital's small garden area. The sky was a pale, clear blue that had nothing dramatic about it. Just sky. Crystal sat in the wheelchair with the portable oxygen unit beside her and a blanket across her lap and looked at the trees. Wong Mun sat on the bench beside her, not speaking. She had not asked him to speak. She had just asked him to be there, which was a different request and one he understood. After a while, she said, "I used to keep a journal about places I wanted to go." "I know," he said. "You had 3 journals running at the same time?" She laughed. It was small, and it cost her something. He could hear the effort in it, but it was real. 3 at minimum, she said. 1 for places. 1 for ideas. 1 for things people said that I wanted to remember. What did people say that was worth remembering? She thought about it. Bessie Mae Calhoun, my grandmother's neighbor in Tifton, she used to say that the bravest thing a person can do is decide what they're going to love, and then love it completely without apologizing. She paused. I wrote that one down the day. She said it. I was maybe 11. Wang Mun looked at the trees. She was right, he said. She usually was, Crystal said. They sat in the pale October morning and let the quiet be what it was, not heavy this time. Something closer to honest. The kind of quiet that two people can sit inside when they have stopped pretending that things are different from what they are. The days that followed had a different quality to them. Not better, exactly, but different. Like something that had been held at a distance had been allowed to come closer, and the closeness, while painful, was also real in a way that the distance had never been. Crystal talked more. About her grandmother. About Tasha, her best friend in Briar Hollow, whom Wang Mun quietly arranged for Daeyoung to contact, and who arrived 2 days later, a small, fierce woman with natural hair piled high, and eyes that went immediately red the moment she saw Crystal, though she did not cry, just grabbed Crystal's hand and held it and said, "I have been looking for you." Wang Mun stepped out of the room when Tasha arrived and did not go back in for 3 hours. That time was not his. He also arranged for Crystal's cousin Della to come from Fayetteville. Della arrived with food she had cooked herself in containers she had packed carefully, and she sat on the edge of the bed and talked to Crystal about ordinary things, family gossip, a neighbor's new dog, a television show they had both watched years ago, and the ordinariness of it was, Wang Mun understood watching through the glass exactly what Crystal needed. Someone who knew her from before all of this. Someone to whom she was not a patient or a victim or a story, but simply herself. He watched Crystal's face during those visits, the way it changed, the way something that had been held tight for a long time slowly, carefully, began to release. She was still fighting, but she was also finally resting. 2 weeks after Dr. Anthony's assessment, on a Tuesday morning with rain coming down soft and steady against the hospital windows, Crystal's numbers dropped. Not gradually, not the slow plateau they had been managing. Sharply, the monitors went urgent and Dr. Regina was in the room within 3 minutes, and Wang Mun was in the hallway outside within 4, standing at the glass, watching the team work with the focused efficiency of people who knew exactly what they were doing and were doing all of it. Daeyoung appeared beside him. Neither of them spoke. It took 40 minutes to stabilize her. 40 minutes that Wang Mun stood at the glass without moving, without sitting, without looking away. When Dr. Regina came out, she looked at him and she did not say we adjusted and we keep trying this time. She said, she is stable. But Wang, we are close now. Do you understand what I am telling you? Yes, he said. Is there anyone else she will want here? Tasha and Della are already in town, he said. I will call them. Good. Dr. Regina said, do that today. Tasha and Della came that afternoon. Wang Mun met them in the hallway and told them plainly what Dr. Regina had told him. Tasha went very still. Della pressed both hands over her mouth for a moment and then straightened and nodded, the kind of nod that means, I understand, and I am not going to fall apart because she needs me not to. They went in together. Wang Mun waited outside. He was not family. He had said that himself on the first night. He was not family, and this moment, Crystal, surrounded by the women who had known her longest and loved her first, was not his to occupy. He sat in the chair in the hallway, and he waited and he let it be theirs. After an hour, Della came to the doorway. She's asking for you, she said. Wang Mun looked up. Della stepped aside and held the door open. The room was softer somehow, with Tasha and Della in it, 2 chairs pulled close to the bed, Tasha holding Crystal's left hand, Della on the far side. Wang Mun came in and stood near the foot of the bed, and Crystal looked at him. She looked tired in a way that was different from all the other tired. Not the tired of fighting, the tired of someone who has fought everything there was to fight, and has arrived, finally, at the place beyond the fighting. But her eyes were still sharp, still present, still exactly themselves. Come here, she said. He moved closer, took the chair on her right side. Her hand was on top of the blanket, and he placed his hand near it, not quite holding it, just near. She moved her fingers and closed them around his, and he let her. They sat like that for a while. I need to say something, she said. Her voice was very quiet now, thin, but steady. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, she said. Wang, let me. He went quiet. I was angry at you, she said. For a long time after you left. Not because you left, I understood eventually why you thought you had to, but because you left without telling me the truth. You made the decision for me. What I could handle. What I was worth risking. She paused. That was not yours to decide. Wang Mun did not look away. No, he said, it was not. But, she said, and her fingers tightened slightly around his, you came back when it mattered. You came back and you stayed and you fought for me when I did not have enough left to fight for myself. Another pause. That matters. I need you to know that it matters. Wang Mun sat very still. Something in his chest was doing something he had no name for and no experience managing. He did not try to manage it. He let it be there. I know, he said. His voice was quieter than he intended. Crystal looked at the window. The rain was still coming down soft and steady outside. Tell me something good, she said. Something that has nothing to do with any of this. He thought for a moment. There is a lake, he said, in Bramblewood, Kentucky. You drove 4 hours to see the sunrise over it once. She smiled. Small. Real. I did, she said. Was it worth it? Every single minute, she said. They sat in the quiet rain and said nothing else for a long time. Tasha and Della were there, close and still. The monitors tracked every beat of something that was doing everything it could. Crystal Anderson passed away on a Thursday morning. Quietly, with the rain still outside and the people who loved her in a room, and Wang Mun sitting beside her holding a hand that went slowly, gently still. Dr. Regina noted the time, said something soft to the room that Wang Mun did not fully hear. Tyla, standing near the door, had tears running down her face that she did not wipe away. Della had her head bowed. Tasha sat straight and still, her hand still holding Crystal's other hand, her jaw set with the particular dignity of someone who refuses to let grief be the last thing in the room. Wang Mun sat. He did not move for a long time. The ceremony was not large. Wang Mun had asked Tasha and Della what Crystal would have wanted, and they had told him something outside, something simple, something that felt like her rather than like an occasion. So, they found a small green space on the edge of Mineral Springs where a line of old oak trees stood along a low ridge, and on a Saturday morning with the October sky sharp and clear above them, they gathered. There were not many people. Tasha, Della, Cressida Vane, the neighbor who had heard Crystal fall and called the ambulance, she came quietly, stood at the edge of the group, and wept without embarrassment. Dr. Regina came. Tyla came. Bex came. Dr. Kason Frimpong stood near the back with his hat in his hands. Dae-Young stood beside Wang Mun. There were flowers, not formal arrangements, but bunches of wildflowers that Della had gathered that morning, the kind Crystal had always preferred to anything cultivated. There were 3 of her ceramic pieces set on a small table. The ones that had survived that Tasha had retrieved from the apartment in Mineral Springs. Handmade. Impractical. Exactly themselves. Tasha spoke. She talked about Crystal the way only someone who had known her from the beginning could, not about what had happened to her, but about who she was, the laughter that filled rooms, the 3 journals, the 4-hour drives for sunrises over lakes, the ceramics made in a studio above a laundromat, the opinions she shared without apology, the kindness that had edges and standards and refused to be anything less than honest. She was not a quiet person, Tasha said, her voice steady and clear in the October air. She was not someone who took up a small amount of space. She took up the right amount of space. And that is what I want people to remember. Wang Mun listened. He stood straight and still, the way he always stood, but his hands were not clasped. They were at his sides, open. After it was over, after the others had drifted away in 1s and 2s, Wang Mun stayed. He stood under the oak trees on the low ridge above Mineral Springs and looked at the 3 ceramic pieces on the small table. Handmade. Impractical. He thought about a weekend art fair in Briar Hollow, Tennessee. A table full of ceramics. A woman who had looked at him and said, "You look like someone who needs something handmade and impractical in their life." He had bought 4 pieces that day. He reached into his jacket pocket. He took out a small folded piece of paper, opened it, On it, in his own handwriting, were 3 lines, a promise he had written out the night before, not for anyone to see, just to make it real in the way that writing things down makes them real, that the money funding the clinic bills in Mineral Springs would continue. In her name, specifically in her name, a quiet, consistent fund that would zero out the balances of people who could not afford to be taken care of. No announcement, no ceremony. Just zero month after month, for as long as Wang Mun could make it happen. That Solange Pruitt and any other woman connected to Andrew Tyrell's history who needed support navigating what came next would have access to resources. Legal, financial, practical, arranged through people Wang Mun trusted to handle it correctly. And that he would not make the mistake of deciding for someone else what they were worth risking. Not again. Not ever again. He folded the paper back up. Put it in his pocket. Dae-young appeared beside him. Ready? Dae-young asked. Wang Mun looked at the ceramic pieces one more time, at the wildflowers, at the clear October sky above the oak trees. She was right, he said. About what? Dae-young asked. I needed something handmade and impractical in my life. Wang Mun said. Dae-young was quiet for a moment. Then quietly, I think you still do. Wang Mun said nothing. He stood there a moment longer under the oak trees in Mineral Springs, Virginia, on a sharp, clear October morning, carrying something heavy and permanent and real. Then he turned and walked forward. And that, right there, is why this story is called what it is. Because the Korean Mafia boss who funded clinic bills for the poor could pay for everything. He could call every specialist. He could dismantle the man who did this and keep every promise and stay until the very last moment. But he could not save her. And sometimes that is the truth of it. Sometimes you do everything right, and it is still not enough. And the only thing left is to carry what happened, honor who they were, and choose deliberately every single day to be better than the version of yourself that walked away. If this story moved you, please leave a comment below. Tell us where you are watching from. Tell us what this made you feel. This channel is built on every single person who takes 30 seconds to engage, and we genuinely appreciate every one of you. If you are not subscribed yet, do it now. There is so much more where this came from, and you do not want to miss what is coming next. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.